X'd Out, A Melanie and Bruno Mystery, Book 1, by Christine Falcone, narrated by Lauren Ezzo. Chapter 1. As soon as I pulled up next to Artie's red Mercedes in the rest stop parking lot, my blood pressure skyrocketed. He had parked under the shade of a towering maple, but the windows were rolled up, and Bruno was pawing frantically at the rear window. The glass was covered in dog slobber, and the little terrier was yelping. Artie was nowhere to be found. He had been named one of the top dermatologists in Connecticut magazine, but my ex-husband sometimes lacked sense about the practical things in life. What kind of idiot leaves a dog closed in a car in the middle of July? I yanked open the rear door, and Bruno jumped out, his leash still attached as if Artie was about to walk him. After I pet him and tried to calm him down, I reached into my car to grab the bowl and water I had stowed on the front seat. However, Bruno only lapped briefly from the water, then whined and strained on his leash. He led me toward the only other car in that area of the rest stop parking lot, a black Escalade parked several spaces away. He scratched at the passenger side door, and I said, "Off," and pulled him away. I peered in the open passenger side window, ready to apologize to anyone who might be in the car. A woman was slumped over the steering wheel, and a man in a light-colored suit had his face pressed into her lap. My first thought was that I'd interrupted something that would embarrass everyone involved if I didn't back away. Then I realized two things. What I'd first taken for shadows dappling the seat and the people inside was blood. And secondly, I recognized that linen suit-clad form. I jerked the door open and pulled on Artie's arm to turn him over. He had 2 small bullet holes in his chest. I felt my insides collapse. The front of his suit was saturated with blood, as was the woman's lap where he had been lying. I felt under Artie's jaw for a pulse. His skin had begun to cool, and the only pulsing I felt was from the trembling of my own fingers. I went around to the other side of the car to check on the woman. When I opened the door, her arm fell from the steering wheel where it had been resting, and she started to slump slowly toward me. I reached out by reflex to stop her from tumbling out of her vehicle. There was no need to feel for a pulse, since the look of her head wound left no doubt she was dead too. I suppressed a shudder and propped her back up in the position I had found her. I ran back to my own car to grab my cell phone off the front seat. I'd dropped Bruno's leash when I first opened the door of the Escalade, and I found him with his ears down and his tail between his legs, huddled against my left front tire. I scooped Bruno up and crooned, it's okay, to him as I fumbled with the phone, even though we both knew it wasn't going to be okay. My hand shook as I punched in the numbers, but I managed to keep my voice calm as I reported finding Artie and the dead woman. At least, I think I started out calm, but must have ended up babbling because the 911 dispatcher kept repeating my words back to me as if for clarification. Are you sure the people are dead? I want you to feel— I did. They're dead. I'm a nurse. I've seen dead before. CPR is not going to work now. Could you please send somebody right away? What did you say your name was, miss? Melanie Bass. The tone of her voice was the same one I'd used countless times myself to calm hysterical patients and their families. Okay, Miss Bass. Help is on the way. Just stay right where you are, okay? Promise me you won't leave the scene until the emergency vehicles arrive. I suddenly realized what she was insinuating. You don't think— I just found them. I had nothing to do with what happened. Stay on the line and stay where you are until help arrives, okay? I'm sure everything will be straightened out soon. It seemed an eternity until I heard the faint cry of sirens approaching the rest stop. They're here. I'm going to hang up. I wasn't sure who was trembling more now, Bruno or me. I held him tight against me as I waited for the ambulance and police cars to pull in. I'd sat with dying patients and their families and done post-mortem care any number of times. But this was different from anything I'd experienced before. I couldn't even bear to look toward the black Escalade again. As often as I'd wished Artie dead in the past, I'd never expected to find him in that state. He seemed so vulnerable lying there, and vulnerability was not a trait I'd ever associated with him in life. Artie had a nose for impending disaster, and always acted to deflect it from himself. He never got a speeding ticket, no matter how much over the limit he drove. If patients were dissatisfied with their care, it was Artie who would call them from the practice and smooth it over. He called a divorce lawyer as soon as he found out I knew about his affair with his now-wife, Tori. He'd said it was just to check the possible scenarios. That raised another important question, besides who shot him and why, which was, what was he doing in the car with the dead woman? If past performance was an indicator, he was acting like a randy tomcat again. And maybe this time, he'd upset someone enough to kill him. The woman bothered me, though. I realized I hadn't seen her at her best, but she looked to be maybe mid-40s and wearing a sleeveless denim shirt, jean shorts, and biker boots. I thought I knew Artie very well, and she just didn't look his type. But why else was he with her? My thoughts were interrupted by what sounded like music. It seemed to be coming from the Escalade, but the sirens were becoming louder, and I couldn't be sure. Bruno began to squirm in my arms, and I bent to put him down on the grassy area right in front of my car, his leash looped firmly around my wrist. An ambulance and 2 state police cars pulled into the rest stop. I watched as the doors of the ambulance opened and the paramedics rushed to the Escalade. 3 of the police officers followed them, and a 4th, whose name tag read Logan, approached me. "Morning, miss, are you all right? Have you sustained any injuries?" I shook my head, unable to find my voice for a moment. He took a pen and a small pad from the breast pocket of his uniform. "What is your name?" "It's Melanie Bass." "Could you spell that for me, please?" He wrote as I spelled it out. "Are you the one who called 911? "Yes, I was here to meet my ex-husband. He's the man in the Escalade." As we spoke, I glanced over toward where it was parked. A van with State of Connecticut major crimes had pulled up next to the Escalade, and another car pulled up next to where Officer Logan and I were talking. A woman got out of the car and strode up to us. "Hello, Mitch." She shook his hand and nodded a greeting to me. "Hi, Sonny. We just got started here. Basic info, we haven't gotten to what happened yet." This new officer had on street clothes and had a badge on a lanyard around her neck that read, S. Cody. The 2 officers spoke for a few minutes. I assumed Logan was giving her my name and my relationship to Artie. It looked like I would be speaking to Officer Cody now, as the other policeman moved away. "Are you the one who found the victims?" She was at least 6 feet tall, towering over me by a good 8 inches. Her dark brown hair was graying at the hairline and pulled back tightly into a ponytail. The parenthesis around her mouth, too severe to be mistaken for laugh lines, kept me from snapping back that if she looked, she'd notice there was no one else there but me. Actually, though, as I glanced toward the fast food restaurant across the parking lot, I could see that quite a crowd was forming as people strained to see what had caused such a large police presence. "Yes, the man is my ex-husband, Dr. Artie Krapaneck." I hadn't expected my voice to catch as I said Artie's name. "I don't have any idea who the woman was. And the car doors were open like that when you found them?" I looked quickly toward where Officer Cody was pointing. I'd forgotten to close the doors in my haste to run and get my phone. "No, I opened the doors to check on Artie and the woman to see if I could help them." The look on her face told me all I needed to know about how she felt about my answer. "You found your ex-husband, dead, and you had the presence of mind to check him out rather than call 911 immediately for help?" "Look, officer, detective." "Okay, detective. I'm a nurse, and I just automatically responded by assessing what condition he and the woman were in, just in case there was something I could do before calling for help. I didn't know they were dead until I checked." "What did you touch besides the car doors? Did you touch both of the deceased to, as you stated, check on them?" She took out a small notebook and began to write in it. I nodded. "Yes, but then I ran back to my car to call 911.